Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Modern Astrology Summit. I'm your host, Suzanne Gerber, and we've got a wonderful interview for you today on a subject that I know has been on everybody's minds and their social media feeds for the past few months. I'm referring, of course, to Pluto and its recent sign change into Aquarius. That's going to play out as a multi-part series spanning 18 months. That's sure to bring some sweeping changes. And then the real fun begins when it lands for keeps. And the wonderful interview is with Wendy Stacey, who's an astrological consultant, teacher, speaker, researcher, writer, and has been for the last 35 years. Wendy is kind of the ultimate astro boss lady because she has a dual role as the principal of the International Mayo School of Astrology and chair of the British Astrological Association. She's also a tutor at the University of Wales's master's program in cultural astronomy and astrology. I could go on, but this information is on her speaker page, and I can't wait to get into this conversation that she's calling Dancing with Pluto in Aquarius. And so it is my tremendous honor to introduce you to Wendy Stacey. Welcome to the summit, Wendy.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you. It's lovely.
I know people are sitting with their pencils poised and ready to take some notes, but before I do, I just realized, and I think I'm right, the Mayo School is celebrating its 50-year anniversary this year.
Yes. In June, we are 50 years old. So yes, we've been an online distance learning school for that long. With lots of graduates all over the world, and we were the first online school in 2007, and we offer mundane and psychological programs. So it's going to be a fun year. We've got lots of things going on. So very fun.
I think a lot of people in the States, it might be unfamiliar to them. So that link will be right there on your speaker page, and there's a lot of good material, and there's free stuff too that they can check out.
Yeah, there's lots of free downloads, come on, and there's lots of free webinars we do. So keep checking in, and there's always something going on.
Okay, well, we got that plug in, but it is such a great resource that I really wanted to let people know about it.
Thank you.
So I know you've got a great presentation for us, and I'm personally really looking forward to it. But before we get started, kind of by way of introduction, Wendy, why don't you start by telling people why they needn't be terrified about this transit, and why, besides with Pluto, resistance is futile?
Yeah, resistance is futile. A Borg statement for those of you who are Trekkie fans, as I am. And I guess the thing is with resistance being futile, it feels like with Pluto and Aquarius, people are fearful of most importantly, I think you hear the fear of AI, and you hear the fear of all the things that Pluto and Aquarius is going to bring. And Pluto in itself, as astrologers, we always see as the dark, horse and the scary one. And you know what Pluto is, can be challenging, can be scary. But when Pluto activates things in our charts, it brings things that need to be purged, need to be cleansed. Often not often until in hindsight do we understand the lessons involved in that. But Pluto is the ultimate healing planet. It is the ultimate healing. It is the phoenix. It is where we can rise above. And part of us does have to sort of die. But it's when I say that, that sounds terrible. But I mean, when we there's a part of us that no longer serves our life's purpose anymore, and that can be wherever that is in one's life. And it teaches us to improve, be better, and more understanding, more insightful. So I think Pluto offers interesting opportunities for us. I'm very much for reframing and taking those challenges and making opportunities out of them because we can. It's sort of like, feeling the, seizing the fear before it seizes us, if you like. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's quite fear mongering, and I don't really subscribe to that, because I think we can make the most of any astrological configuration. Some things will be tough, yes, challenging, but ultimately we will, rise above it, learn from it, and be grateful that it happened, even though it's hard to see at the time. We will be grateful, because when many doors close, others open, of course. So that's sort of what Pluto offers, I think.
I love that. That's the perfect reframing. And I think if you ask most people about some of the toughest things that they've experienced in their lives, when they tell you about it, you're gonna, and if you ask them if they don't just volunteer it, if you had the opportunity to make that not happen in your life, would you? I think every one of them would say, no way. I am
exactly
so grateful. I wouldn't have gotten from this whatever to this.
Yeah, wouldn't have met this person, wouldn't have got from A to B, wouldn't be in this career path, wouldn't be happy if this hadn't happened. But it's just hard to see at the time. But it's
that's a perfect thing to add, that when we're going through it, as a great quote from Churchill, right? When you're going through hell, keep going. Because then you get to the other
That's
side.
a new one. I hadn't heard that before. That's brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, it's one of his classics. I mean, and it is, for Britain having endured World War II, and then we look at Pluto like, oh, I lost my job, or
Yeah,
this toxic relationship ended, or whatever however it's getting played out. You put it in a wider perspective, and suddenly, it's the problems don't add up to a hill of beans kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's hard to step back from Pluto transits. It's hard to step back. It's hard to be objective, because it's consuming. It is consuming, but it's in that consuming that we, have to see things for what they are, and they don't always look that well, or smell that good, or feel that great, but they will. It just is it's a walk that we have to walk, but it has so many rewards, so many. It's
I love that. And it's when people are really trying to wake up to the truth of their life instead of just what they want, the fantasy of the life, and say, well, maybe I'm really here for a purpose. And really, maybe it's something beyond my ego desires. And there's nothing wrong with ego desires. It's just, I think, ideally, we would marry them to the soul. And that's where to me, that's where the tension or the contrast comes in. And we have a hard time getting out of it with our little human minds. And to me, this is when we bow at the altar.
I like that. And
it's
I like that, and that is with any planetary transit too. It is soul work, isn't it? And it's I like that. Yeah, it's very befitting for that. And Pluto's when Pluto ingresses into a new sign, it just stirs everything up. And it brings the energy, a new energy, which we're so unfamiliar with, but we do become accustomed to it. We do.
Well, we've got 20 years this time.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it out of the gate.
Yeah, exactly. It's still at the starting block. It's got a long way to go, and we have a long time to adjust, and we will adjust. And part of this ingress is so exciting. Well, a lot of it is very exciting. Yeah.
Well, I think dread or excitement, that's a choice we get to make.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't mean being an ostrich. It doesn't mean going into denial about what's happening. It's you talk about reframing. Well, we reframe with our language, but the real reframing happens when we change the lens, right?
Yeah,
our own personal viewfinders.
Yeah, and with this ingress, definitely our worldview is going to change, definitely, along with the other outer planets too. But this Pluto, there's a massive shift from when it starts its ingress to as it journeys through, and when it ends, that it's going to be a different world. We're going to be different people, and it's huge, and but it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and we will all cope fine. We will. Yeah.
So do you want to start your beautiful presentation, or?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
I mean, we can wax philosophic about Pluto all day, I'm sure.
Okay, so just to really start with just the dates, I think is important, and some of you will know these dates. Of course, Pluto first went in March 23rd, which really is, spring of this year. And it followed Saturn going into Pisces. So its ruler went from Aquarius to Pisces, which makes quite a difference in how Pluto behaves, how Pluto unfolds, things like that. And of course, Pluto, as it goes back over the next 18 months from Aquarius to Capricorn, we're going to see that sort of desperate last analytic degree of Capricorn trying to get in to it's like that's the finishing line. So that Capricorn, which we saw, for example, the week before the ingress, we saw the banking system due to regulation, which is Capricorn. At that 2950 degrees of Capricorn, we saw, the New York Regulatory Board bringing, closing Silicon Valley Bank, followed by Signature and the others as well, and creating a less of a confidence in the entire world and on the planet. So the banking system sort of has that volatility which we haven't seen since Pluto first went into Capricorn in 2008. So now it's at the end of that journey, we're seeing the same thing. And that Capricorn's about regulation. It's about, trying to get things over the finish line. So all the things outstanding from Pluto's journey through Capricorn is going to be revisited, and it's going to go back and forth between now and November next year. And I mean, this is a good thing, on many levels. There is going to be regulation. You can hear the talk about AI, things like that. We need regulation, ethics, things like that. Hold it back for a little bit. So that's the sort of narrative we hear with that. Interesting, when Pluto in Capricorn in 2008 with the financial crisis, that was about subprime mortgages, which is very, bricks and mortar. It's about mortgages, it's about houses. Whereas now Pluto at the end of Capricorn, the banking system, it was about startups, it was about cryptocurrencies, it's about, so it has that Aquarian flavor to that journey. So this is what we're going to see between now and November next year as Pluto goes back and forth from Aquarius to Capricorn. And we're going to see Capricorn trying to regulate everything, trying to hold things back, trying to, make its last stand. And, we see this in every area of life, whether it be politics, whether it be economics, whether it be education, housing, social systems, and judicial systems, and constitutions. Everything that Capricorn sort of stands for is up for renegotiation. Well, I say renegotiation, it's probably a soft term for when Pluto goes into Aquarius, because Pluto in Aquarius says, we don't need this anymore. We don't need to do things like this anymore. And what's very pivotal about this particular ingress is it's at 0 degrees of Aquarius, as of course as it would be, but it hits the same degree as the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020, December 2020, which hadn't happened for 800 years when those two planets conjoined in air for the first time. So this is a pretty big deal. And we can expect absolutely unprecedented change, not only in human history, but in human involvement. This sort of configuration is very new to us. And everything we do and have done pretty much for the last couple of hundred years is up for change. And I know some people are resistant to change, and some people feel that it's really hard to navigate their way through this, but it's actually okay. You know, I'm reminded in 1995 having a debate with people at work about mobile phones. 1995, I worked with 500 people, not, you know, only one had a mobile phone. And, you know, debating, and I said, you know, 10 years time, school children are going to have mobile phones. And people saying, I don't want to live through that era. I don't want to live through that. Well, you know what? School children 10 years later had mobile phones. The world has not ended. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. In fact, you know, there's no rewinding the clock on things like that. We adapt. We find the benefits in this sort of thing. And so all of these areas of life, everything, you know, even the way we eat, sleep, work was pretty much organized by the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Earth that started 200 years ago. So we're going to become quite different. And some of the things that we're going to be looking at quite differently, of course, is sky and space. Now, you know, you'll hear all the Pluto fear-mongering things like the fear-mongering being, you know, aliens are going to invade us. And that is what you will hear. But as long as you know that, you know that, you know, Neptune's and Pisces, there's a bit of propaganda going on as well. Now, there you are going to hear things like that. The movies are going to be fantastic that come out of this journey. But the great thing is the sky and space, we are going, even like the James Webb telescope has given us such incredible insight into the visuals of our universe. So this is a really beautiful thing. We can now see our universe. We can understand our universe. And as Aquarius is so intent on doing, it ensures that we take a much larger view and find our place in the universe. You know, when you have planets on Earth, we find our place in work, we find our place in our aspirations, but in Aquarius and in air, we look to where are, you know, humans, where are we in the larger scheme of things, in our solar system, in countless universes. You know, and I'm reminded of Arthur C. Clarke's quote, who said, we are either alone in this universe or we are not. Both are equally frightening. And for me, I just think it's just wonderful to sum up. But, you know, it's going to be amazing. We're going to be so much more connected to the sky. We're going to clean up our atmosphere. We're going to, you know, do lots of that. But also Aquarius is about shifting our moral compass. Our moral compass, you know, Aquarius is very, very hot on making, you know, it has a very strong right or wrong lever. So we're going to be doing a lot of damage control from the last, you know, well, I would say the last couple of 100 years, really, since the last cycle of Pluto being in Aquarius. And relating, excuse me, Pluto is in Aquarius, it's an air sign. So relationships are going to, you know, they're going to change. We can already feel that. We can already see the difference in that, whether it be online, polyamorous, it's, you know, marriage is no longer, you know, things like that are going to change. Marriage served work, which is an earth concept. You know, kids today, excuse me for calling you kids, but, you know, younger people today, you know, may not want to get married, and you can see that. Similarly to when Pluto-Uranus conjoined in the 60s. So Pluto is in Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, but also modern ruler Uranus. And we can see a lot of these hints from the 60s and the 60s generation, particularly those born, well, between 1962 and 1969. But you see the same sort of thing, the sexual freedom, sexual liberation. You know, Pluto is sex, Uranus is freedom. So when you have Pluto going into Aquarius, you know, there's going to be a lot more liberalness about that. And you can, and when Pluto goes back into Capricorn, you're going to see people trying to hold on to the nuclear family and trying to continue with sort of their own religious, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that. This is just how it's going to play out. This is how it works. Pluto in Capricorn wants to hold on to the status quo. Pluto in Aquarius wants to mix it up and say, hey, why not do this? Why not? You know, and the brain and the mind. Pluto in Aquarius is going to make a change. You know, we've been in Earth, so it's been very much about the body, what we eat, how we sleep. Well, now it's going to be about the brain and the mind and what we can do with that. And it's going to send us into some pretty interesting things. And along with data overload, information overload, the brain and the mind is going to be, we're going to learn quite a lot about that. And, you know, people are sure going to play with it in terms of things like the singularity and be able to upload, download, things like that. But that is, you know, it also has benefits, as is with AI. AI can bring huge benefits to humanity. It's just, and, you know, Pluto in Aquarius is morally, you know, I mean, it can be the shadow as well, like everything in astrology. You get the good with the bad. It's like, it's or the good with the challenging, I prefer. But so you will get, like lots of interesting things happen. And then there'll also be, you know, the other side to it. But either way, humans are going to evolve, and they're going to evolve. We are going to evolve quite, you know, like I think that we never have. And I'm not talking about cyber limbs necessarily. I'm talking about psychologically, morally, humanness, in terms of equality, in terms of things that are democratic. And one interesting point is I wanted to say that this Pluto, it's the first time in human history that generations are having Pluto oppositions. Because of life expectancy now, and because of Pluto's orbit, it's not circular, it's oblong, I should say, not rectangular, that would be odd. So it's oblong. And so it appears to us on Earth that Pluto travels faster through some signs and slower through others. Now, because of this particular time where Pluto's orbit is, because it goes through Leo and Virgo, and Cancer, Leo, Virgo quite slowly. But then you have it going through Libra, Scorpio, Sag, and all that quite fast. So we're going to have a couple of decades where human beings, for the first time on the planet, generations, and a dominant generation with aging society, are going to have Pluto oppositions. So this is going to be, and I think COVID was part of that, particularly as it targeted older generations. You know, this Pluto oppositions is about survival. It's also about ultimately wisdom as well. But there's a lot to learn from these, which, you know, we can't even possibly comprehend at this point. And it's a great time to be an astrologer. Aquarius rules astrology. We're going to be looking up to the stars. It's going to be, you know, magical. It's going to be great. So, you know, you have the right profession or the right hobby to travel on this path, because it's only going to get more and more so, like it did 800 years ago when the Jupiter Saturn went into Aquarius and air, and now Pluto is going to ramp that up. It may take a while because Saturn is in Pisces and Uranus is in Taurus, so it makes it a little bit sluggish and a little bit slow. But Aquarius is fast, it's progressive, and it's future orientated. So when those planets change sign, so when Uranus goes into Gemini, Saturn, Neptune go into Aries, there's going to be, it's going to be, we're going to enter that tricky era, and it's going to be exciting, you know. Now, I was going to talk about Pluto going through the houses, because it's, you know, Pluto, we don't really look at Pluto going through the signs in our chart, but in houses, they become more personal. Now, I know that people use different house systems, and you can apply this to, you know, whatever house system you use. It doesn't matter. You can use this, and often a couple work, you know, but there'll be, I personally use Placidus, but I also use other house systems for different things, depending on what I'm looking for, you know, whether I'm looking psychologically, mundane, or things like that. So now Pluto through the houses. So when you've got Pluto going through your first house, so this is someone like now who's either a Capricorn rising or Aquarius rising. And so Pluto through the first house, this is going to trigger everything that the first house stands for. And I'll put this on the sheet on the PowerPoint so you can refer back to it later. So Pluto in the first house is going to redefine how one projects oneself. It is going to bring up how one is born into this world, and it can be very literal or it can be metaphorical. But Pluto, it is about the self in a different way than the fifth house. But the first house is how one projects oneself and how one enters a room. So if you've got Pluto in the first house, you know, it's going to bring a completely new dimension to it. You know, you're going to feel shyer. You're going to scan the room. You're going to be interested in knowing what's going on. But, you know, what it does is that Pluto brings the opportunity to start something. And a lot of people have problems starting things, but it's quite, you know, it's in an innovative house. So it's a good time to start things. In the second house, we know that with astrology, we attribute it to money, possessions, and the physical body. So when Pluto travels through the second house, we see a change in our financial situation. Now, it can be good or challenging or both. You know, you may have a new way of earning money, but you'll probably also have a new way of spending it. So there's like different ways you can think about that, but it's also a really interesting time to monetize things as well. A good time to sort of find different ways, using your own, looking at resources, looking at how you earn money. You know, it is security conscious. So, you know, I think with Pluto in the second, people can get a bit paranoid as well about money and about security. But it's a really good time to switch that around, switch it around and use Pluto, use it, you know, seize that opportunity. And the same with the body. Sometimes people want to make quite radical changes to their body. In whatever form that they want to do that. Everyone has their own preference. But the body often, you know, there's something about, you know, wanting to transform one's body, to transform it. I mean, it can be, you know, it's usually the first house that people do that with their hair or their clothes or the car that they drive. And the second house, it's often about wanting to put on weight or wanting to lose weight. And it can be for health, you know, rather than it's other body image or anything like that. But it's, you know, or some, you know, it's often, you know, so people like often go to the gym to do one or other of those things. And then we think of the third house, Pluto going through the third house. And you think of all the keywords associated with that, like, you know, communication and, you know, travel, local travel, neighbors, siblings, early education, things like that. But ultimately, it's about mobility. So when Pluto travels through that third house, and I mean physical mobility. So when Pluto goes through the third house, people, you know, change the way that they move, change the way that they travel. You know, it's like, is it, you know, buying a car? Is it, you know, getting a scooter or not getting a scooter or whatever? But there's some, you know, and it's about how we want and our new communities and new networks and things like that. You know, it's Pluto in the third house is great to, again, like sort of, I don't want to keep overusing the word transform, but that's what Pluto does. So it gives you an opportunity to set up new networks, deep dive into those networks, and create the right ones as well. Not on, you know, there's nothing superficial about Pluto at all. And I know that social media can be, but so, you know, what it does is it actually bypasses a lot of stuff and sort of goes straight to the heart of things. And that's where you can use Pluto in that respect. But, you know, that there's lots of ways you can use it in terms of communication, be it writing or oral or, whatever. And Pluto invites you to take the plunge. It's scary, but it's worth it. It does pay off. In the fourth house, and similarly, with Pluto going through the fourth, it can often have a signature of sort of upheaval in the home, and it can, so make the most of it and renovate. But I had a client who she let me use her details as an example, and she was very young with a young family as well. And she had Pluto come into her fourth house, and she demolished her house and built a new one. That's how she dealt with that. And it was fabulous. Everyone told her it was going to cost her a lot of money, and she made money on it. She made money. Pluto is a lord of wealth. If you do it properly and you do it right, then that's what's going to, there's going to be massive benefits from it. Renovate. And if you have Pluto in the third house, renovate your car or renovate something like that. Do your bike up, whatever. But in the fourth house, it's about your home, and it's about also changing lots of other things to sort of serve your own comfortable needs as well. That also works for diet. I mean, the fourth house is ruled by the sign of Cancer. I don't subscribe really to the moon Saturn thing unless there's role reversals in the house or things have changed. And so when it comes to diet, food, anything of those Cancerian qualities, Pluto offers a chance of changing that too. People often go on really quite strict diets in the fourth, similar to Saturn. Saturn and Pluto and Saturn have a lot of similarities in that respect. So Saturn can be quite hard on some. There's a difference between Saturn and Pluto. Saturn is very hard on oneself. Pluto, you have to sort of seize that power before it does seize you, because sometimes you feel like you haven't got control of it. Saturn, you have a lot more, you have free will with both. But Saturn is, we have it more often. Pluto, we don't. You won't get Pluto going through your fourth house twice in your life unless you live over 250 years old. And so Saturn we become more familiar with, and we've had it, much more transits, but it can feel restrictive like Pluto. But it's more.
Wendy, I wanted to interrupt for just a second
Yeah.
and ask you to, and love it. You said this outright, and it's been the theme, and I would love for you to emphasize this, that Pluto is going to help you do the things the right way, a way that's more aligned for you, to help you kind of clear through the debris, that this isn't random and negative, that ultimately the changes that it's helping you initiate, and sometimes by taking it out of your control altogether, are really for a very good purpose. And going back to what we were saying in the intro, you might have to view it with hindsight to appreciate it. But these are so people don't get scared and think changes are going to happen in their body, their home is gonna, this is for us, right? Not happening to us, against us.
Yeah, and it's yes, exactly. And you can really grab this energy and use it. Like Pluto in the fourth, you have to clean out your house. You just have to clean out, and if you don't, it's something's going to happen where you have to leave that. I mean, that's when I say seize the power, not that people are going to be made to leave, but their house. I'm not saying I don't want to. That's the sort of fear mongering I try to avoid. But there's an opportunity here to purge, get rid of all that stuff you actually don't need. You just don't, and that's for Pluto in the fourth. It's like you need to do that. It's like you need to stop doing lots of things that wherever Pluto is in your chart and which house it's traveling, it's going to invite you to take a big deep dive and look at what has to go, and what has to go is completely reflected by that house. Yeah. like, Pluto in the and then Pluto in the fourth as well. When you do those dark dives, deep dark dives, sometimes, you find some skeletons in the closet from your family history, things like that. And they'll be quite plutonic. I mean, it's quite fun. But at the same time, you also find your own tribes. You find your own tribe, you find where you're from, or you create a new one, whatever works for you, And that's what the fourth house is about. And in Aquarius is not necessarily interested in bloodlines. It's more interested in like-minded people. So it's with Pluto and Aquarius in the fourth, it's going to be wonderful that you want to live with like-minded people. But you may also, I've got a client at the moment, and Pluto in the fourth, and she's just realized that she needs to sleep in a different bedroom than her husband. And it's working fabulously, because Aquarius is about space. It's about being able to have to breathe in this. Excuse me. So things like that, are things that are going to be visited while Pluto's in the fourth. In the fifth, in the fifth house, it's visiting lots of many things. Fifth house is about play, it's about creativity, and create your symphony. Create your symphony in the fifth house. Do whatever that is. Is it a composition? Is it a painting? Is it writing a song? Or maybe it's just playing. And maybe with Pluto and Aquarius there, there's the fifth house often needs to stand tall, needs to stand a little bit taller than other people. So, similar to Capricorn or similar to the 10th house. So Pluto and Aquarius sort of brings that down a little bit, and just, so it's a time to revisit what hobbies you have, what recreation you have, what is it what you want to do, what is it that makes you play, what is it that makes you happy. And also, fifth house is about children in modern terms. And so, a lot of people visit that. Do I want a child or not? And either way, often Pluto through that house, determines that. I've known people that have had births through while Pluto's going through their fifth house, and people who have decided, oh my gosh, I've realized I don't want children. This is, it brings rise to these areas of these houses. And again, knowing your house system, you'll feel that before it gets into that house. It's a long, you would have felt it, and you'll feel it when it goes through to the next house. Fifth house also about speculation. So, with Pluto being, Lord of Wealth, often, that is a time for gambling, similar as the ninth house. So it can be speculative and things like that. Again, people like to play, Pluto in Capricorn is always a lot more calculated risk, of course. Pluto in Aquarius is probably a little bit more game on. So it's a little bit higher risk, I think, with that too. And fifth house is, love affairs. So, Pluto in the fifth, it's like, well, enjoy it, or, or not, if that is the case, because Pluto can deny as well. It can say, none of that. Like Saturn is more likely to not give the permission. Pluto is more, or Saturn can deprive, whereas Pluto is more likely to make you question at a very deep level why you don't want this, why you want that. And sometimes the answers are really hard to accept, because it will bring rise to something else. But Pluto is that onion that has to keep getting peeled back. That's what Pluto does, and it's not always comfortable. In fact, it's never comfortable in that respect. And it makes you cry. But ultimately, you will be better for it once you address it. That's what Pluto invites you to do, to address it. In the sixth house, sixth house is a great time to mix up your daily routine. Get out of bed at the same time, do this, do that, your whole routine, everything from brushing your teeth to making your bed and all that sort of thing. These are earth concepts, excuse me, which were very much perpetuated by the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in the 60s, because that conjunction occurred in Virgo. So, we have strong Virgo traits in our society, from, the way we work, the way our health system is, and everything we do has a Virgo tint, because we have generations that have managed it for decades. If you've got Pluto in Aquarius going through your sixth house, it's time to mix that up to serve what you need. Pluto and Aquarius in the sixth house needs freedom at work. Doesn't really like being told what to do, similar to the 10th house in a way, and the 5th as well. Pluto in the 6th, maybe you need to work, maybe your most productive hours are 3 in the morning till midday. That's what Pluto in Aquarius does. It goes, who cares? Do what you need to do. Have the autonomy, have the freedom to find your schedule, find your itinerary, find what works for you. And maybe you shouldn't have to eat 3 meals a day. Pluto in Aquarius is going to visit all of that. The one thing I would say with Pluto in the 6th, people can get a little paranoid about health issues, things like that. So, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be paranoia. So what one does is invest in their well-being. That's what one does. Just takes a different view on well-being. And then we move through to the and just to say about the difference with Saturn and Pluto in the 6th house as well. Saturn is like losing your job. It's like being made redundant. Whereas the 6th house, Pluto going through the 6th, sometimes it can feel like your career is over. It's bigger, it's bigger, it's deeper, but actually it can be very beneficial and may put you on a path where you never thought you would be so satisfied, so content, so in awe of what you end up doing when one door closes. So Pluto is ruthless. I mean, Pluto and Saturn can be ruthless, but they, as we know, they both bring massive rewards. Pluto through the 7th house, this is about, it's about the other, it's about the partner. Often they can, the partner can actually, I had an old teacher who used to call it transit stealing, who they always thought that, your partner, and especially in the 7th, can, you take that transit. So you may feel that your partner or partners are having that Pluto transit, because often that's how you're going to see things. So sometimes, I guess the more challenging side of that is, get into sort of power imbalances and power debates, and people may come into your lives that sort of dominate, similar to Saturn. But this is also a time to sort your relationships out. What do you want in a relationship? Pluto in Capricorn does things by the book, you see. So before, with Pluto in Capricorn, we sort of did things by the book, and we kept the status quo. Pluto in Aquarius in the 7th is now going to say you can do whatever you like. There's freedom in the relationships, so, and the same with friends. But you may be, if you've got Pluto in the 7th, you're probably going to attract Plutonic people into your life, which is very sexy. So it's a great thing. It's not a terrible thing. And, or people that are just truthful and loyal. Pluto, it's like the Scorpionic people are so loyal. So loyal. I mean, I know Leo gets attributed with loyalty, but I think that Scorpio Pluto is so much more. Pluto dies for people. Scorpios die for, they put themselves on the line. Leos perhaps not so much. I say that I'm a Leo. But um, eighth house. Pluto going through the eighth is, I think quite a deep dive into one's own mortality. So, which we don't talk about death, enough really. No one really talks about it, yet it's the most inevitable thing in life. And so here, people get their affairs in order, not just, their death affairs. And I'm aware that, you might be 20 years old listening to this, and you don't need to do that. But you might want to think about, what is it that you don't want to live without? What is your bucket list for your 20s? Not to say anything's going to happen, but what is it that you really want to do? And when Pluto goes through the eighth house, I think people need to feel alive. They need to sort of be on their edge. It's, I know, and that's why Uranus is associated with Scorpio too. It has that sort of edge to it. It has that sort of, you need to sort of feel close to death. And when I say that, I don't mean it cynically. I mean jumping out of a plane. People jump out of planes, or they do something that they wouldn't normally do to feel alive, whether it be a bungee jump or whatever floats your boat. But so it's time to do that. Sometimes it's through a relationship, through a very intimate relationship, and it can be held, like, again, feeling alive. And that's what the eighth house does. It makes us feel alive. It takes us on a journey that's very singular and memorable. And so enjoy it. And I know eighth house is also tied up with money, other people's money and things like that. And yes, sure, it's a good time to get your insurances and your pensions or whatever it is that you have to do. But do note that Pluto and Capricorn, they're all going to shift. Pluto and Aquarius is not interested in the standard of living, pensions, banking systems, or insurances. It's quite the opposite. So some people may feel the need to not do that. The ninth house. So the ninth house, Pluto going through the ninth is a desperate, really huge need to connect with other ways of thinking. And I know, we know ninth house is travel, higher learning, and things like that, but it goes deeper than that. It's entrenched in something. It's walking a monk's walk. It's knowing how it feels to be a Catholic nun or whatever. It's, or taking or it can be doing a course or doing something that changes the way that you think. Pluto does, Saturn is about discipline. If you had Saturn going through the ninth, it's a good time to go to uni. It's a good time to do something, apply yourself, discipline. Pluto will make you think completely different. When Pluto leaves that ninth house, your worldview will have changed massively, hugely. People leave God or find God or some version of that with Pluto through the ninth. And I think it's, it can be challenging because it challenges, that's what Pluto does. For example, you may be introduced to quite a different worldview, which on one hand is very interesting, but what Pluto does is it makes you question your own. It makes you question your own and where that comes from. Why do we believe this? Why do we do, So, and that is the uncomfortable part of Pluto as well, because then it sort of, as Pluto does, it opens Pandora's box and there's no putting the lid back on. And you have to keep walking the walk. And it's not always fun, but it is, ultimately incredible and worth it. Excuse me. 10th house, Pluto going through the 10th, it can, it's a massive game changer in terms of how one puts oneself out into society. I'm reminded of Richard Nixon had, Pluto transit to his chart when he had a massive fall from grace, which is what you would expect Pluto over the MC and into the 10th house. However, I remember also looking at Elvis Presley's comeback chart when he had Pluto going through his 10th, and it just soared, and it still does, and it has more royalties than than it did when it first came out. So there's lots of, again, you get the good and the challenging, and Pluto through that 10th house is about checking on what it is about social status that you want. Some people don't want social status, do that, they don't want social status, or they or they they want to retreat from that. And so you can it can trigger both, but it does make you sort of wonder, what is it that you want to be? And of course, like the 4th house, it's a parental axis. And sometimes, the difficult part of Pluto in the 10th is asking oneself, why did I want to do that? Why did I want to, or why did I not follow that path? And uncovering those answers is what's uncomfortable, because it may come back to the parental axis or something like that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but it just brings rise to things that's like, wow, and that's what Pluto does. That's the difference between Pluto and Saturn. Saturn, it can be hurtful, but with Pluto, it's a massive wow. It's game changing. Yeah, and I often say to clients, I know that it's very hard right now, but when you're, on that rocking chair on your porch in your 80s, 90s, whatever, you will be very glad that this happened. You can't see it at the time sometimes, but it's worth it. Pluto in the 11th house, this is, again, one needs to purge their social network. Often it's not comfortable when things end with friendships or groups or things like that. But there's also, again, new doors open. Sometimes we just have friends or family or jobs or whatever we do just for the sake of it. And we've had Pluto in Capricorn for 15 years. And we don't normally mix it up. So Pluto in the 11th wants to make quite a change. So it's sort of a new relaunch. It's a reset. Pluto resets. And so with the 11th, you're going to find different groups, different networks, but also, again, especially the 11th and 10th, 11th, 12th, or 9th, even 9th to the 12th, people's worldviews change when that Pluto goes through those 4 signs. They're more social signs. And so you will change, your views will change. Your tastes, and it's also the shadow of the 5th house. So you will be interested in different things, whereas the 5th is recreation. The 11th is about, how you aspire, what you aspire society to be. So your contribution or not plays a part with Pluto going through the 11th. Pluto in the 12th, it's Pluto in the 12th, you'll read lots of different things. I think what's really difficult with Pluto in the 12th is it feels when you have it, I think it feels very haunting. It can be, sort of that paranoia. It can feel haunting. It can feel alone. But there's something also beautiful about walking in the dark alone. And that's why I just think it's the 12th house is a magical, beautiful, spiritual house, very misunderstood house. And I think walking alone, I'm sort of as I'm talking, I'm reminded about, the movie, The Green Mile, and John Coffey. And, and I remember him saying, I saw you in the dark. And there's something really beautiful about Pluto in the 12th with that. And, it's a really deep dive into one's soul. Why, what is it? Not why one is here, that is more the 1st house or the 5th, but why we are all here. And that's what gives it the priest or priestess quality about it. it's magical, it's spiritual, it's incredibly psychic. And it's time, and if with Pluto in the 12th, it's a wonderful time to connect with things much larger than ourselves. And it's a very creative house as well, very creative. And so connecting with, things like classical music, things like Bach, and things like, different genres that change how you feel, and things like meditation. I know that sounds very superficial, but it actually, it's about transcending the body, transcending all of that horoscope, and finding your own enlightenment, if you like, without sounding, cliche. But it is finding your own space, finding your own enlightenment, and embracing that. I have a friend who was in palliative care. Or she ran the palliative care unit, and I used to call her the ferryman, because she always took people from one side to another, and my gosh, she did it so beautifully. And she didn't just take the person, she took their families and helped them, with things like that. And it takes a really special type of person to do that, to be able to transcend from one to another. She also had it with a strong 8th house as well. But that was her job, and she was just loved her job. And not to say that people should go into palliative care when Pluto is going through the 12th house, but I'm just saying it's what it does is it offers an altered state. It offers a way to connect to something that's much, that's wonderful and rich and magic and spiritual. So yeah, which as opposed to Saturn, which is more scared of it. Both are can be scary, but Saturn can be more inhibiting, whereas Pluto is more, grabbed and plunged into the depth. And I think it's something that one can just enjoy, observe, walk the walk. It's like riding the wave, surfing it. So that's Pluto through the houses.
I just love, Wendy, how you keep saying it's enjoyable, exciting. It's wonderful. It's very nice to offset so much of the dread I think that people are whipping up. And I think bottom line is we don't know. It's just the attitude. It's the space we hold for something magical and transcendental to come in. If we're gripped in fear, well, there's no room. There's no room. There's no way we're just going to relax into it and let things work through us and be stretched. And I was going to say expand. I don't think it's necessarily that. It's really, put through the whole spin cycle. In this case, a 20-year spin cycle where, and I think that it's important to mention that we don't feel the intensity of it for the entire 20 years. The beginning is always beginning of these changes. It's always going to have the most energy because it's been so stored up. And of course, it's so individual, right? What's it going to hit in the natal chart?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just as you were talking, I was reminded of when Pluto went over my moon, and my moon is in Sagittarius in the 9th house. So I'd sort of always worked in race relations as a Sag moon in the 9th, you can understand that. But when I traveled, I changed continents when Pluto went onto my moon. So I moved countries. I was culture shocked when I met my husband. I never thought I could be culture shocked. It wasn't easy. His family were culture shocked as well. So it wasn't an easy start for us. But Pluto went over my moon, I gave birth. It went retrograde, it went over my moon, and I gave birth again. And how can I not? It was one of the most incredible, well, it certainly was the most life-changing thing ever in my life. But it was so rewarding and incredible. you know, my daughter's Plutos are on my moon, of course, but things like that, you know, it comes with a lot of stuff, you know. And it's so, the thing with Pluto, it's so hard to see at the time. But it's like, you know, it's easy to say have faith, but it's not really about faith, but it's have faith in oneself, really. And if you know, if you're aware and open, then it's, you know, it will certainly work. Well, you know, it always has great outcomes, but the more open, I think, and embracing you are, it's just so much more beneficial.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I always look at in the way I work with clients and students is nothing is only one way, right? Everything contains a whole spectrum of possibilities. It goes from really the kind of more difficult, painful, lower vibration shadow, right up to the highest, most aspirational transcendent. And the shadow and the highest are really just flip sides of one another.
Yeah.
And it isn't as simple as just, oh, I'm going to change the way I think. We often, the more entrenched we are in something, the stronger a force it's going to take to blow us out of that and move the needle. And two of the words while you were going through the signs that I was thinking that just kept coming into my head, Plutonian words, keywords, the shadowy ones have to do with terror, just absolute paralysis and control and power and control, which is what a lower expression of Pluto tries to do, control others. And the flip side of that is what? This is the surrender into. It doesn't mean you stop making choices and taking action. Of course, you're always going to be doing that. But what we surrender is our attachment to what we're doing. Say,
absolutely.
Well,
and that's a really good word. Attachment, I think, is a really, really good word to use with Pluto. Absolutely. Because it is that surrender of the attachment that's often, that's the uncomfortable. That's the one stuff that hurts. But sometimes we realize that, once that's done, how freeing that is. That's how really, life-changing. How life-changing that is.
That's where the liberation is. The liberation, you know, we all have our different definitions and we think how it would feel like, but I love the Buddhist approach, which liberation is just really, you go through things, but not attachment. That is freedom. Yeah, exactly. It is absolutely. I love that. Yeah. That word is very, very, very poignant with Pluto. Definitely. And it's so perfect with Pluto and Aquarius, which is, and another thing that was occurring to me when you were going through the houses and talking about moving out of Capricorn and leaving these old paradigms. And it isn't just the what it is, it's a belief that there's only one way, that this is right. And what I know about Aquarian energy, it doesn't mean that the opposite is right. It simply means we all get to choose our own way. Yeah, exactly. And I think traditional marriage will continue because there are people that like that. And there are untraditional ways to partner, not partner, change partners. And that's wonderful too. If there's room for all of it. There's room for all of it, isn't there? There doesn't have to be we don't have to we don't have to give everything a seal of approval or have a one-way street with certain things. And some of the things that served that served society and people in different ways just no longer apply. They just but we continue to do things because we think that we should, and it's that Saturn word, and that Pluto and Capricorn, the should and the shouldn't, and that's what. And Pluto and Aquarius goes, why? Why would you? So it's really fascinating. Yeah, and I think that Pluto in Aquarius can also say, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's
Exactly.
give it a go. I mean, you know, we can always
Yeah.
change direction. It's a very exciting time. And I really want to thank you for not just taking us through and giving people some very practical things that they can apply and think about, but to give everybody that opportunity to reframe, to give people the keys so that when they stop watching this, they're like, wait, what do I do? Well, we just say, I have choice here. I have choice. This thing.
Yeah.
And if we don't have faith that we're going to be grateful for it at the end of it, we can just have hope.
Yes, beautifully put. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's better than the alternative, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all living proof of that. We're all living proof of it. You know, it works. It works, and it will be huge, but it will be amazing. Amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a perfect place to end. I don't want to say anything after that, except maybe amen. But before we let you go, Wendy, you have a gift and you want to tell everybody about that.
Yes, so we have created a page on the website, which Suzanne will be sending you the link for on the Mayo School website, where you can download, or down here, that you can download a free multiplanetary transits webinar. Well, it's actually more of a workshop. So it has a retail value of £49.95. So I think that's about $70. So yeah, we're offering that free to anyone. So you just need to go onto the page, go onto the link and download that. And it's yours, and it's yours to keep. And we're also offering discounts as well. So discounts on that same page. So if you're interested, you will have discount codes if you're interested, but do get the download that's yours to keep for the outer planetary transits.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. And I'm not going to send you the link. It's going to be right on Wendy's. It's on Wendy's speaker page, along with the links. Go right now. It's fine. Right to her personal website, to the Mayo School. And I invite you to check it out and follow her. There's a lot. There's just a lot more, and she's such a treasure. So thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing all that with us today.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, thanks, everyone.
And be sure to tune into the rest of the interviews on the Modern Astrology Summit. And have a great day, and we'll see you next time.